And while the other poor sod's struggling in on the tube, I'm gonna go and get some milk out of a cow. Who's a jammy bastard? Look at all this milk. I'm gonna make a fucking fortune.
Hi, my name is Lilith. Welcome back to RantCraft. And I know I've never been on this menu and during an intro before. So Vampire World, that's where I got the screenshot for the outro card, which you'll see if you finish this video. RantCraft, that's the normal world, and Penis Land is the thumbnail world. One day, once I get, I don't know, 10k subs, I'll do a tour of Penis Land, and every tier after that, do a tour. Anyway, hello, it's been a while. I'm sorry for not posting. My brother was over, and I really value family pretty much more than anything else in my life, minus Dungeons and Dragons. Not to say I value it more, but I'm more passionate about it, or that and politics, of course. You wouldn't be here if I wasn't super fucking autistic. You just saw Minecraft crash. That's not great. Yeah, you can see the aesthetic I'm trying to go for with this series. It's right here. I wanted it to feel like you're in a cozy room that's well lit, that always makes you feel safe, even when you're talking about fucking insane shit and you're saying like, oh, we should drag the president out of his fucking White House, and well, I'm not gonna say that because I'm pretty sure that would be illegal. But it's been a while, and I keep thinking I've got to put more and more effort. And so I've been contrasting putting a lot of effort into these videos and just getting myself to just do it. Because for one, these videos are from me. I'm in the kitchen cooking like fucking Gordon Ramsay. And this is for me. But I want it to be a video that I'd watch, because the entire point of this channel is to make videos that I would watch. Because, I wanted there to be a content creator that would make videos for me. And honestly, sometimes I watch my old videos and I like them because I made them for me. I made them for me because if I like them, someone else likes them, But another reason why I spend so much time getting to make videos that are like, they're supposed to be like fucking rants, is honestly, I just want every video to be a little bit better in some regard. And this time I chose increasing the audio quality, having separate tracks for the game audio and the things that are going on, like in my talking. Like, hold on, I'm going to actually check right now to check my audio properties and make sure that these are separated so I don't waste time and effort. Yes, they are both separated. That is excellent. So that way I'll be able to separate the volume of the, the whatever the fuck I've got going on here. And make sure that you are hearing a decent game volume, and I am hearing a decent game volume, and you are hearing me speaking being the primary thing. And I've even contacted not a YouTuber, an indie musician, Umbria. They're a dungeon synth group, because I really want to use some of their music as background music, because I like it. I just love dungeon synth. It's one of my favorite fucking genres in this world. But you didn't just come here to, hear me talk about dungeon synth or how much I love my family, or any of that. Although I imagine you came here to hear whatever the fuck I'm gonna say, because I don't know, maybe you're just sleeping, and maybe you're like me and you're fucking just wanting something that's going on, You know, like a lot of the times, one of my most watched video genres recently has been videos that just make me feel, I don't know, safe. They make it feel like, you know, not like I'm a kid again, because when I was a kid, most of the time it wasn't a good experience, but like, you know, like you're having the ideal of childhood, even though you are, you know, an adult. And what I mean by that is like, when I was a kid, like people would tell me like, oh, you know, you have it good because your life is pretty much stress free and you can do all this and you can do all that. But a lot of the time I couldn't, or my ability to do that was hindered because of money, or was hindered because I just lived in a very rural area, or it was hindered most frequently because I was in a very abusive household. And, you know, a lot of that put me in a mental space where I did a lot of things that I didn't like. And, you know, I hurt a lot of people in ways that I didn't want to because I couldn't control myself. Because, you know, uh, something about growing up traumatized is that you do things that are fucking insane sometimes. And people can't understand them. You can't understand them. You can't justify them. And you don't know why you're doing them. And then it creates this like cycle of like guilt. Like you're just doing insane, harmful shit and you can't even stop yourself. And everyone's just blaming you and blaming you. And if you're like me, you know, a lot of people say I'm like autistic or whatever, and I don't want to do that because it's not quantifiably provable so far. Like, you know, nobody's ever given me an autism test, and I don't want to get one because I don't want to be, you know, the fucking retard Auschwitz or whatever we have going on when Donald Trump finally grows a pair and just says, yeah, RFK, do whatever you want. You know, and so, you know, it's not a benefit. All it imposes is like social mobility restrictions. I mean, yeah, you can get like some help with certain things, but I don't feel particularly hindered by any of the things that other people would describe as like autistic factors of me. Making sure that the lighting behind this isn't too hot. I'm using this ghetto ass lamp. I know a lot of people, they hear the word ghetto, they're gonna say like, oh my god, well, you know, that word was used to, it's used to denigrate black people and whatnot. And and you know, I think that's fair statement against it. But I think for it, it can also just denigrate the conditions in which people were sort of used to living in. What I mean by that is that I think that the word ghetto has an implication of things that are poorly maintained, left to rot, things that have been destroyed sort of by the effective the effective force of capital. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to say something's ghetto as long as you know the implication. I think knowing why you're saying something can actually make it a lot more okay. And acknowledging that, like I am doing right now, is the best way forward, you know? And as long as you know that and acknowledge that and you're using that word with awareness, I think it's fine to say things. I don't think that we should like race restrict words. That might be a spicy take, but like, you know, and I'm going to say this and a lot of people are going to hate me and they're going to think, oh, you just want to say the N word, which I don't want to say the N word, because if I wanted to say the N word, I would say it. Our society rewards people who are willing to say whatever. It always has, because that's what capitalism thrives upon. It thrives upon people who do extreme shit because it wants you to do whatever will grab the most attention, whatever will make people feel best. It's actually better financially to be a terrible person than it is to be a great person. And the reason for that is that people want to feel validated in being terrible people. And terrible people are willing to spend fuck tons, and I mean fuck tons of money, just so that you will make them feel like they're not bad people. Because people don't want to be bad. People just want to be able to do what they want. And if you saying the N-word makes them feel better, they will do whatever they can to not feel like a bad person. And I know you might say like, oh, but maybe that's what you're doing. And you're right. That is a possibility. It could be entirely that I have some subconscious desire to say the N word. But insofar as I'm aware, which I would say I'm a pretty self-aware person, I don't think that. I think that by race restricting words, I think that you're sort of recreating the hierarchy of race relations. You're just putting it on its current head, which, you know, is it's not as awful as a white person saying something racist about black people and or restrictive about black people. And the reason is that there's not as many black people wanting to limit white people as there are white people wanting to limit black people, or, you know, black people wanting to limit black people on behalf of white people. And so, you know, obviously when there's less, it's like pushing someone in a kiddie pool versus pushing someone in a 6-foot deep pool. In one of them they can drown, and in the other, the effects probably aren't going to kill them. I mean, hypothetically they could, but it's rude either way, I feel. And also, it's not a good practice. It's not something you want to get in the habit of. You don't want to get in the habit of, you know, pretend drowning people, because sometimes, eventually, you might real drown somebody. I don't know if a lot of people are going to agree with that. A lot of people might, you know, if that gets heard, a lot of people are going to throw an insane fit, and then they're going to see my YouTube subscriptions. They're going to be like, oh, you're a Vosh viewer, therefore you're like the devil. And, you know, fair enough, whatever. Horses are hot. I'll say that. Horses have raw, charismatic sexual energy. You can't convince me otherwise. And I'm willing to die in the hell. Okay. How the fuck did I build this doohickey? Is this just... Oh. I think I get my own contraption. But, you know, I'm just so tired of this world, of people recreating the thing that we want to destroy. You know, I feel like that's really harmful. And I feel like if your options are to let people, you know, this, oh God, this is a doozy to say out loud. But like, okay, here's the thing. What happens when you don't call someone out for saying the N-word? Well, they might say something. They might be saying this word for racist reasons. Odds are, most of the time when people say the N-word, they're saying it for racist reasons. But my main problem is that we have this idea that it is inherently bad. And that it's the inherent part that's a problem, because we have this idea that's inherently bad to do this thing if you're white. And I just don't think that's a good basis for moral discussion. I think that's actually really harmful. And you know, like saying, oh, it's okay to do this thing if you're white, and it's so bad to do this thing if you're black. And you see this like recreation of this flipping of power hierarchies, not destruction of power hierarchies in like you know, small communities, but this flipping, this inversion of hierarchies. And like you see it all the time, like in a lot of AFAB trans spaces. They do it with trans women because they find them annoying, which we are annoying. And I actually don't do that. What I just did, don't self-deprecate ever. It's not good. Anyway, point is, they'll say all these things. They'll bitch, they'll scream. And then in a lot of AMAB trans communities, they'll do that. They do the exact same things because everybody does this. Everybody who, pretty much every, and I don't even think either is to a worse extent. I think they're both to equally bad extents. I think that you generally shouldn't be a bioessentialist. I know I'm crazy for that one, but you shouldn't be a bioessentialist. I think that's horrific, and I think that you're just doing more harm. I think that actually removing the idea of like how gender functions from your brain is the best thing that you can do for yourself as someone who wants to push forward the needs of transgender people. Anyway, point is, I think it's on the same thing with the N-word. I think that saying white people can't say the N-word is bad, but I also think saying white people shouldn't get in the habit of saying the N-word is honestly just a much more preferable argument. For one, a lot of people really don't like hearing the N-word. All right, this wasn't supposed to be about the N-word, but it's called RantCraft, and it's my video essay, and I get to talk about the N-word. Anyway, I think that the more productive way to say this and to talk about this to make people feel, well, one, make people understand like this isn't a bioessentialist thing, because bioessentialism is cringe and you're just recreating racism. And a lot of normies will point that out, and then they'll go the dark route and say, okay, so I should just be racist because these people are both racist. That's wrong. You want to reframe this in a healthy and positive way and just say, a lot of people don't like hearing the N-word. And if you say the N-word, a lot of people aren't going to like you. Just like how cuss words used to be. And you know what? One day, I have full confidence that one day it will be completely socially acceptable for white people to say the N-word. But until we work together and until we end a lot of the disadvantages that Black Americans face, you shouldn't say the N-word, because it reminds a lot of people of very bad trauma, because it's just like it's something people I don't know really how to explain it beyond it's just kind of rude to say a word that reminds people of so much hatred. But again, I don't think we should enforce it. And you don't have to like that somebody says it. You can tell them, hey, I think that's a little rude of you. But I mean, if someone's fine with being rude, like if someone's like, I'm rude, and that's my personality, as long as they're like keeping it to a certain level. And I think keeping it to a certain level, I don't mean like, oh, well, I think that as long as they are not crossing a moral line, because being rude isn't necessarily, I don't think, inherently immoral. I think that being rude sometimes is your only way to avoid being evil when you're just having a really hard time coping with something. Like whenever I was rude as a kid, one of the main reasons was always that I just couldn't say things in a productive way, but I didn't want to cross a moral boundary. And like when I was a kid, I would make these really extreme jokes. I mean, I still do sometimes when I'm just like so like stressed and torn up. Not necessarily the N-word. I try to avoid saying that. Although growing up in a community with a lot of African Americans, I will say that it does sort of enter your mental vocabulary, even if you don't want to say it per se. And that can cause a few problems. But growing up, I don't know, just say things in a way. I guess the lesson from this is to just say things in a way where you could justify this to someone who isn't a fucking woke-pilled lefty, right? Like, have opinions that you can defend and not just sound hypocritical with. I think that's important. I don't know. Maybe you can see why. Oh no. But yeah, don't bioessentialize kids. Not bioessentializing, not even once. Fucking I think that it's healthy. It's fine. Don't bully people to death for saying the N-word. Don't fucking. And like every time you see a celebrity say the N-word, you have these fucking people say like, oh, look, cancel culture is out of hand. Which one, cancel culture, not really a thing. If you have wealth, money, fame, and power, unless you're just completely morally reprehensible, like unless people just genuinely don't want to be around you in those industries, you're fine, right? Like you're fine. Cancel culture is not going to take your money away, and money is going to make people want to hang out with you. if you are genuinely doing something so reprehensible that people don't want to hang out with you in the modern day, you've like seriously fucked up. Like you've shat the bed if you can't get rich people to hang out with you and you have a lot of money. And so, you see all these people talking about cancel culture and la-di-fucking-da, and that's not a thing. But if you say things that you can't justify, you're going to make people think that you're scaring the hose away. You're scaring the hose away if you can't justify your own arguments. And a lot of the dirtbag left or the scumbag left, or a lot of them, people always hate them because they're so like obsessed with like optics. But like, they're just unequivocally right on that. Even if I don't agree with all of them on their everythings. If you can't get people to agree with you, then you're never going to win anything. And if the thing you can't get people to agree on is whether or not, I don't know, just don't push people away from minor shit that isn't actually like, are the police out there systemically, like, I mean, they are systemically murdering people. What I mean to say is, it's not the N-word that's killing people, it's cops. And focus on material issues, please. Don't make yourself look too bad for non-material issues, because I think that really just weakens everybody's ability to get things done that, will really help Black people and Hispanic people and other marginalized groups. I would like it if no one said the N-word, because it makes me think of bad racist guys. But, not everybody's going to do that. And a lot of people, they're going to say, oh, well, you let this Black guy say the N-word. And it's like, yeah, but, and they're right to a certain extent. You do think it's acceptable for the Black guy to say the N-word, but you don't think it's acceptable for the white guy. And I think that, that is a correct thing for them to call out. They are right in calling out that kind of hypocrisy, because it does just kind of feel like you're recreating this thing that is hideous and shouldn't have been created to begin with, Can't wait till I get a 40-minute video essay about me when I get famous, and then they're like, oh, you're like a Discord groomer or something. And like, me, I'm a very, I'm not a person who seeks out sex. Once I have someone who can provide me with sex, I'm good, Doug. I'm a very time sensitive woman, right? I'm never going to be a Discord groomer, just because, honestly, just think about the time you're wasting. Like, fuck, dude. You want me to groom somebody? I don't. Look at my fucking Google Doc on how much time I have. I'm not doing that. Anyway, that's not all I wanted to talk to you about. And I keep saying that. I keep saying that's not what I wanted to talk to you about. Well, bitch, clearly it was, because that's what you said. I do kind of want to talk more about that, actually. A lot of people, they're going to call me racist and say that I'm just going to want to say the N-word. And honestly, I'm fine with that, because at the very least, I don't care if people say evil things as long as they give a fuck. And I know that's so fucked, but like, I don't know, maybe the real thing that matters is that people are caring about left-wing issues in a left-wing way. I don't really care how many people disagree with me on this, because I think that even them disagreeing makes the world a better place. Even them just saying your mind. If you ever disagree with me and you're a leftist or whatever, don't feel like pussyfooted about it. Just say, hey, I don't think that's true, and I'll get it. I might call you an idiot or a retard or whatever, which, I kind of feel the retard thing too with this. because, I think that the way we treat that word is equally, foot and mouthed, I guess, because it's literally just an insult to one's mental capacities. And as long as competency is a thing that we can agree upon, that is acceptable to insult people, which most insults fall under competency, right? They're either competency or they are like moral character, and arguably moral character is an issue of competency. I think that a lot of people are simply do immoral things and simply think immoral things, not because they are bad people, but because they don't have the proper mental faculties to put those things together, and then people push them away, and they don't make them put up the walls, you know what I mean, but they do kind of cause them to put up those walls, right? Because everybody wants to say like, oh, well, I had this happen to me and I didn't turn out this way. And that's great. But a lot of people did. And it's not because they're stupid or because they're worse than you. It's because they lost the die roll, essentially. Like their brains said, yeah, actually, I'm going to think the racist thing. And in my little mental arm wrestle, the racist thing is going to win. And because of the emotions that they're feeling, because your brain is trying to protect you emotionally. And that's not an evil thing. That is just a thing, right? That's just how people are. And I think looking at that and saying, you have a moral failing and therefore you're evil, I just think it's not helpful, because I think that I want to focus on things that will change people's minds genuinely, that will make people act better. I want to produce better results. And I don't think that will produce better results. I don't think enabling people to be, super rude to each other is positive. And I don't think enabling the thoughts that make people right wing, I think that's a bad thing to do. And if you disagree, please comment, because I love it for the algorithm. And honestly, I like hearing what people have to say. Like sometimes I go on Reddit a lot and I argue on Reddit a lot. Not because even if I say that I hate these people, in truth, I love diversity of thought. I don't want censorship, because I really just love hearing what people say. And it's like labbing in a fighting game almost for me. It's like I love like putting my arguments against other people's and expanding my mind by like fucking working at it with people. Like, if you think like, oh, your opinions on Israel are like actually like super anti-Semitic, which they're not, but you're allowed to think that, then fucking fight me in the comments. A lot of people, they see all these quote unquote debate bros and they're like, oh my god, like, they can't change people's minds and whatnot. And it's not about that. It's about making yourself better. And the racist is also trying to make themselves better. And, even if they're on the side of evil, I think that ultimately, if you put a bunch of thoughts against each other and you let people like create new techniques, like even if we let the right, like let's say we let the right lab mental techniques and rhetorical techniques, like because we are factually in the correct, right? The only thing they're doing is giving us more techniques we can use, because there's this idea that only the dishonest can use dishonesty, or only the right wing can use manipulative tactics or tactics that are just truly effective. And that's not true. Now, is it easier to do that when you're like so mentally just fucked up and like thinking insane things? Yes, it is much easier to do that as a right wing person, because you're not really connected with reality. However, I think that is still useful, because they're, don't ignore what they're doing, right? They're showing you how to win. Don't let them just fucking, don't snatch defeat from the jaws of victory, essentially. Everybody in this world can teach you anything you want to learn, right? If you want to learn how to get good at convincing left-wing people, listen to what right-wing people are saying. Like, I got this video on my algorithm, right? And it was like it was this 4chan shit, and I recognized it as soon as I saw the word. I forget the word's called. It's like lufty. Uh, yeah, yeah, you saw that. Oh, that's my Discord. Whoops. Luckily, names are censored. Anyway, it was about like the how normies just want to like seize your mind and how they want to stop you from thinking everything. And a lot of it was very clearly influenced by right-wing political thought. It wasn't, nothing he said was necessarily that crazy. I think a lot of things that the person in it said are very like harmful. Like they're bad ways of thinking, because that won't make you healthier. Like that, thinking like that, thinking things like that about other people is really not productive. Like, holy shit. It like the way that they view people who, you know, judge them, it is really harmful. But I think that ultimately what that video did was it gave me a little bit more insight about like how people think about like what drives people to be this way, because that is a very important thing to understand. And I'm sorry, but you can't just live in your little communist bubble if you want to make more communists. Well, if you want to do communism, you got to make more communists, right? And if you want to make more communists, you can't just talk to communists. Sorry. I know. Do you think well, actually, like I said, I do enjoy it. But do you think most people really want to listen to people they don't like? You know, no. But like, does it have a benefit for everyone? Yes, I think that if you listen to a 4chaner for like 5 minutes, you will get an insight on how we as like the left can win, like better insight than you ever would have gotten from a left winger. Or, you know, minus me, because I'm like the best on earth and I get hella pussy and hella dick, and I'm literally just like Karl Marx, like reincarnated, you know. But anyway, you know, just listen to people because they'll tell you their insecurities and what is feeding into them. And maybe you can use that to avoid feeding into more people with those insecurities, because there's not a single person in this world who is 100% unique in all of their feelings, or rather, there's not a single person in this world who's unique in all their feelings, because people might be unique, but like feelings are basic. They're like alchemy, like the metal, wood, water, fire, air. I think that's the Chinese elements. You know, point is, if one person thinks something, a lot of other people think something too. And if you aren't listening to people, you're going to miss out on things that could really, really help you snatch a W one day. Get that epic victory royale, you know, fucking. Yeah, that's my thoughts on thems. I wish andesite could be. Why can't andesite do the thing that Biomes of Plenty does with other types of stones and say like, okay, yeah, if it's andesite, it's also cobblestone, because let's be real, it's serving the gameplay purpose of cobblestone. And why can't I have an andesite pickaxe? Why can't I have stone armor? Okay, I want stone armor that maybe like slows you down and makes you take more fall damage, but like is better for combat than, you know, a lot of things. Maybe it's also fragile, but it's like, you know, if you're fighting the Hinder Dragon at a pitch, I don't know. Anyway, one of the main things I took a lot of time researching, because I really wanted to get this right, was about America's farmers. One of the worst things plaguing America right now is the fact that the farm industry is for profit, and that supplies our food. And we don't get most of our food from America, but the American economy, under Trump's regime and under other hawkish regimes, which will come in the future, because of course they will, eventually we're going to elect someone who's going to push people away, and it's going to make trading harder. And we don't produce most of our food in the US. It's produced in a foreign-made way. And US farmers cannot sustain themselves because of the fact that they're reliant on the market. And, you know, it got like, I was watching that More Perfect Union video fucking about all the goddamn farmers, and they're all complaining. And, you know, it just really got to me like, hey, this thing isn't sustainable. And they were like really too nice to these people who, let's face it, they all voted for Donald Trump, and they all decided to ruin their own careers because they hate brown people for the most part. And you know, that sort of got me thinking, why do we have our farms like owned by the market? Or rather, why do we have our farms in the market? Like the market, I'm not going to deny, nor would Marx, you know, deny that the market was great at producing certain things really fast and sometimes really efficiently. However, why should that be the thing that is responsible for our food, right? Food is something that you're always going to need. And making the industry of food, the industry of food production, reliant on fucking the whims and the insanity of a market is just not something I think you should do. Like, how frequently do companies just crash? All the time. And what happens in our current economy? Well, a bigger company swoops in and picks up everything that was there. And they use less ethical means. They have worse people operating them. And they generally do whatever they can to drive up a profit. And because we have companies that are too big to fail, and this is a compounding of problems, but these are problems that will pretty much always exist in capitalism, and that large companies and monopolies will pretty much always come to fruition in a liberal capitalist economy, because those with money will buy their way to get more money, especially in political circles and political offices. And so what you're going to get every time is the market is going to start favoring things that don't help the proletariat more and more, and they're going to start favoring things that help them make money more and more. And I think what's happening with our farmers echoes that really well. So basically, all these farmers, they can't make money. The things that they're selling are selling for so cheaply because of the ability for people to produce these things, and the fact that people don't stop buying groceries, right? And if something gets expensive, unless it's like a severe like war ration scenario, people don't stop going and getting the same things. If eggs get expensive, people still buy the same amount of eggs. If eggs get cheap, people still buy the same amount of eggs, because you can't save eggs. Unless it's something like rice. But even then, people buy rice and then they don't use it all for a while. And, you know, food is an inelastic thing, which means that people aren't going to buy food when it's cheap. And the things that would normally stabilize a market, because markets are elastic, and things that would normally get food to an equilibrium price aren't going to do that, right? Unless you have something that is controlled that can manage that. And a lot of people, you know, would advocate for food nationalization, which I think is a bit of a risky outcome. You know, full-on nationalization, it hasn't always worked out well. And now I think that when people say that things like in a political science manner haven't worked out well, I think that that's a little bit of a tricky subject to discuss, because how are you going to say something hasn't worked out well when even like the most rigorous like subject pools, like even the largest data pools within the realms of political science, well, those aren't really large enough to even be considered in most like hard sciences, right? like if you gave a physicist a data pool the size of what a political scientist or an economist was working with, he'd laugh in your fucking face. He'd say like, "Oh, you're funny. You're funny. You think I'm going to do science with this? I can't wipe my ass with this data pool." All right. And you know, when your economy is nationalized, though, it does often lower the amount of food that's actually produced, and does it often. Well, here, and the thing that makes it difficult to talk about again, beyond just the fact that the data pool's so small and political and economic science things, is that a lot of the countries that did food nationalization did it out of necessity, and they did it out of prediction of things that were about to get worse. And that's like the rub of it, that like, yeah, of course things got worse. They knew things were going to get worse. That's why they nationalized. And so it's a very chicken or egg situation that makes discussing it hard. But I will say that a lot of the instances of food nationalization weren't the best. I think Israel actually had one that turned out pretty well. That's my one compliment for Israel, like, ever. That's the one compliment Israel's ever going to get from Lilith Renee Williams. Besides, I like their funny hats, and Hanukkah sure is a blast. I can't wait to get some latkes next year. I think that they did nationalization pretty well, but I think that overall, we can do something that's honestly far more achievable in America, and that is, oh my God, what was I going to say? Why am I like this? What's happening to me? I need 64 of these. I don't need 64 of these. What the fuck am I talking about? Ooh, ooh, ooh. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Sorry, I'm gonna vocal stem while I do this. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Perils. This is the best thing that I added to Minecraft. If I could take this and add it to like Better Than Adventure or whatever the fuck, you'd never see my ass playing modern Minecraft again. I'd be playing fucking Daggercraft. Dude, actually, you know what? Next thing, it's gonna be a Daggercraft playthrough. It's gonna be me. I'm gonna be horsing around like fucking BoJack Horseman. Dude, it's gonna be a blast. We're oh no. That's not what I wanted to do. It's okay. We can fix this. We can build back better. Like Obama. Eating a burger, no honey mustard. I'm not even gonna mind that, because I actually like there being a little bit of ore in my cave. That's why I turned on 4x, because I want there to be ore that I don't have to mine. I don't have to think about mining it, because it can just make my caves look pretty. Wow, would you look at that? All right, this is cobblestone. This is wood. Wood products. This is metals and shit. That's not a metal. This is agriculture. Dude, I could put away so much of this. This is miscellaneous. Dirt. Dirt and sand. Actually, earths. Miscellaneous earths. Okay. Okay. Dude, I'm sorry. I locked the fuck in at the wrong time every time. Anyway, what was I even saying? Oh yeah, the data pool is so small that, yada yada. And Israel did it well, but yada yada. I think that what we should do is use state-owned enterprises. Yes, I remembered the thing I wanted to say. State-owned enterprises. What they are is essentially like businesses sort of run by the government. They're typically a lot looser than actual like government businesses. And the boon of that is that they get like when somebody gets elected that you don't like, it doesn't cause as much of a stink. No, they don't have to shit themselves every time somebody gets elected because they're still companies. And they're not always beholden to shareholders, but sometimes they can be. It might be like, why is a Marxist advocating for this? And you know, I'm not a big China fan in terms of like politics. I think China's a neat country. But in terms of like political things, I'm not the hugest China fan. Everybody knows this. Who knows me? They hear me talk about the things that I hate about China's government and their economy and the things that I find stupid and just liberal. But you gotta hand it to them. It's a pretty effective method. So state-owned enterprises, one of the things that they are really good at, and I mean really good at, is keeping things stable. They don't sacrifice as much like efficiency that nationalized companies do, but they also get things done. Like they get things done really well. And you know, actually I have a book I write everything in, just so I don't ramble too much, because I want this to be alive, because this is a fucking forever world. Yeah. And actually, did I write anything this specific? Oh yeah, they can basically organize the market, have it more controlled. They can still keep small farmers and whatnot in the clear by not, you know, necessarily having the entire market controlled. And you might be saying that's anti-communist for a lot of my like lib-hating people out there. No, it's not, because the Soviet Union and Maoist China, this is even pre-CCP, and Maoist China both did very similar things. If you like them, and if you're tanky saying that, which is probably tankies because they're the ones who say things like that, then checkmate. You're the lib. You're the lib. I studied the USSR. They actually had small co-ops, and they actually did allow small instances of private ownership. And you know, we can't forcibly socialize businesses yet, not with our current model, right? I think expecting that is crazy. But I think a good step forward is, okay, well, what if we, with our businesses, what if we offered a solution to the big companies like Monsanto? What if we absorbed Monsanto and, or not necessarily absorbed, the details of it, of this specific implementation, I think they could be worked around by people who are hired to do this, because one of my main things is politics. I like economics and I study economics, but I haven't done the prerequisite training, the actual number crunching. I've mostly just done a few cursory classes, and I watched the little, you know, the MIT courses and stuff like that. So don't murder me if I'm not, you know, fucking Huey Lee, who is the GOAT. Even though he's super libby, he's the GOAT. All right. But point is, markets exist, and we just have to work with them. And doing this is a way that we can keep more poor people fed, which is really what we want to do, right? I think our goal as socialists and communists, at least for me, can be described as making the people at the bottom have as good a lives as like high quality of life as possible. That's my philosophy in life. Whatever does that, whatever creates a world wherein the poor have a higher quality of life, that's the thing I want to do. Even if it may not be by the book Marxist. And I think SOEs are great at that because they stabilize the production of food. What if you're like a super fashy guy and you're like, well, what about, you know, this is like kind of communist and this isn't the way. Well, even fascist nations do this. For Israel, for example, they're fascist, dude. They're fascist. They're, you know, they are like hearts of iron fascist. All right. And you know, they did it. They had a pretty similar system. Actually, their system was closer to a lot of what the USSR did. which, sorry, you're having to admit that you either hate Israel, hate fascism, or you love Israel. And most post-war, most mid-war economies actually did this during World War II, because it's a very nationalizing your labor or having some form of controlling your labor and your resource production is just a universal thing that a lot of peeps have to do in order to stay alive in war economies where food's tight. Anyway, SOEs let you control the production of food whilst not necessarily having direct control and needing a government official to do every little thing. And I think that they're the right way forward in terms of that. They'll increase the stability of America, right? Like, if we had more SOEs, just think, like, why wouldn't you want America to have enough food produced internally to take care of itself, right? Like, if you are pro-America and you're pro-USA and you're pro-West, why would you not want fucking America to be able to take care of itself, right? So even if you aren't like me at all, even if you're like well, this is like stinky or whatever, this is a stinky socialism you're doing, I think even you can admit, or that, this is positive, that this is something, yeah, like, why would we let companies try to interfere with the government? Why would we let individual people try to supersede the majority, right? But I'm not necessarily trying to appeal to that type of person per se, but I think that's a good argument if you're talking with your buddy who's like super fascist and you say like, hey, I think that the way we organize our food companies is like terrible. And they're like, actually, I'm a fascist and I disagree. Tell them, well, actually, it's for national security. Why do you want foreign powers controlling our food? No, that's what I thought, you stupid little bitch. And beyond just like controlling food, right? But beyond just national security, it also has one of the explicit purposes of being able to hold on, check notes. Yeah, you can make underproduced crops better, which, in case of market failure, like, let's say rice isn't selling well, you can have your SOE make rice. Isn't that awesome, right? Now everybody has rice when they need it and not just when it's profitable to make rice. And, a lot of people would say like, oh, but the market would like take care of that. And let's be real. No, it fucking wouldn't. There's a lot of demand. There's a lot of demand for like GPUs, right? That doesn't mean the market's taking care of it, right? If we want consumer grade GPUs to be available, that's going to have to be a top-down thing. I'm sorry. Somebody's going to have to be producing GPUs for the consumers, and that's going to have to happen in order for our current consumer-based, electronics-based economy to function, right? That's neither here nor there. But okay, national security, that's great. And it keeps food prices more stable. That's great. Well, what about efficiency? Sometimes they do have efficiency loss. And like, yeah, that is true. Even compared to nationalizing, they definitely have better performance than nationalized agriculture. Oh no. The flying pumpkin. But, relative to non-nationalized, they have benefits that far outweigh the cons. And also, if we created a state-owned enterprise and we made it like one of the largest, if we could make a state-owned enterprise larger than Monsanto, what we could also do is share trade secrets. We could, develop trade secrets with one of the largest budgets on the earth if we used our military defense budget, which I think you could argue that that's a very strong thing. That's a very good thing to do. Because if we don't have trade, which, let's be real, the way that things are going, we might not. And, we might scare away trade for hundreds of years with the way we've been behaving. If we don't have trade, we'll die, right? The US will perish. And that's honestly for the greater good, but like a lot of people would get harmed in that process. And I don't really care about the greater good if a lot of the people that I want to put food in the mouths of start starving to death. Like that, it's not worth it if it means that I'm ultimately creating more harm than good. And not a lot of people want to be like, they want to say like the austerity thing, like, oh, well, they'll just have to get over it for like, the long term. But like they're living now, right? Like they can't, the long term people don't exist yet. And I think that argument maybe works for the environment because a lot of the things we're doing are unsustainable. But I think when it comes to food, we can do that without, destroying the future. Just, I not through nationalization as much as it sucks, because I do love the idea of the government just saying, fuck you, this is ours. And we're going to work with it. In our current system, it would drag and drop much better, and plus less opportunity for violence, right? Like if you're not just taking everything and you're just saying, hey, certain rich people, we're going to absorb your company, or we're going to make one and it's going to be better than yours because that's what we're going to be using military labor for, and military effort and research for. I think it's ultimately a good thing if Monsanto dies and the idea of like trade secrets for food, one of the most essential things on earth, is destroyed. I think that we should actively also, on top of SOEs, like in terms of like creating ways to make our food production more sustainable, make worldwide like fewer food shortages. I think also actively sabotaging companies like Monsanto using our military intelligence networks would be one of the best courses of actions we could put that to work for. I don't think in the realm of science that is not directly related to war, and I mean directly, like it has to be like a bomb or a gun or something. If it's not directly related to war, I don't think it should be allowed to be a secret, right? Why should it be? If it's not going to get people killed, if it spills, why are you limiting the growth of knowledge and technology? And it's one thing with art, because art is fun. It's great. I love art. It's not going to, if we don't discover a way out of certain problems, the human race might be extinct. Whereas if we don't discover a way out of fucking, I don't know, how to make Mickey Mouse porn better, we'll be fine. That I'm so sorry to people who, they're like, oh well, what about the rights of people who worked for it? And if you create an SOE or whatever, it might disincentivize the rich from like innovating in that sector. And like, I think a lot of people think that whenever, like you're like a lot of people, whenever you say we're going to make this thing like less beneficial for the rich, they're going to say you're discouraging the wealthy from working hard. And like, yeah, we certainly should, because like you already made it. You deserve to live a comfortable life. You don't, like, you can exit the rat race now. Why should we encourage people to make themselves miserable? And why should we encourage them to make themselves miserable while simultaneously making other people miserable? Like, that doesn't make sense to me. In what scenario do you want the people who've already contributed quite a lot, more so than the common person, perhaps? Why would you want them to feel miserable? Why would you want them to be stressed? You don't want them to relax, kick their feet back. They've earned the American dream, right? The American dream isn't whatever the fuck you think it is. It's chilling on a beach and drinking a Coca-Cola with your new like shiny Corvette, right? It's not fucking working until you die and, being on shareholder meetings. And it's not that. It is the exiting of labor that forms the American dream. And I think that if you disagree with that, I would hate to see the world made by people like you, I think that The world should serve us and not the other way around. Um, and so, I think that one, you're actively anti-rich because you're sort of encouraging the rich to be put in systems. You're punishing them by putting them in the rat race, by continuing the rat race even further than it should ever have really continued. You know, yeah, we should discourage people from owning everything because one, we don't want one person to own everything, right? We want there to be enough of everything for everybody to own. Two, they aren't the only ones who make wealth, right? Like, how many people do you think are involved in running a McDonald's? It's a lot, right? It's a lot. And even management, even manage, like a lot of people, a lot of communists and pro workers people, they like absolutely hate managers or whatnot, but they're involved and they're helpful. And a lot of them are basically wage laborers. The only exception is that frequently they fuck over their comrades because they've been told to, because they've been allowed to. Well, I think that if we like, just because someone has money doesn't mean that they're going to produce better than another person. It just means they would be able to produce on a larger scale individually as a single person. But what an SOE can do, and see, I'm wrapping it back, bringing it around town. What an SOE can do is say we don't have to rely on individuals to be exceptional. We can rely on the collective, the group, our government to bring a lot of people together because that's truly what makes things exceptional, right? Like the pyramids, they aren't exceptional because they were built by, fucking whatever fuckhead that commissioned them and just the architect and nobody else. They're exceptional because they are a collection of widespread organized human labor. Without the common working class, nothing we have that is valuable would exist. And the people who say that by nationalizing or that by taking things to organize an SOE, you are one, you're making everything less efficient because only the rich can create efficiency. But they also say like two, you're making everything worse because you're discouraging people from collecting wealth or from working hard. They don't understand that those were never the people that were actually doing things. I feel that if our nation were based upon the backs and the wealth of the common people, right? It would be far more prosperous. It'd be far more prosperous if everybody contributed $1 than if some people contributed 100 and most people contributed 2 cents, right? And by concentrating wealth in the power, you're not by concentrating wealth, what you do is you do not make those people more productive than everybody else. You make everybody else less productive because their lives suck, because they don't want to be living the way they are, because burnout, because it's unsustainable to be the way that you think they can be, right? Because the world is built by them, and if you're holding them back, you're holding everyone back, right? If you're holding back the mothers that take care of their daughters, and the people who cultivate families, and the people who cultivate the things that make any group of people great, that make any area great, that make anything great, you are stifling 1,000 people who, let's be real, have just as much potential as the rich. Just so what you can fucking, what are you getting out of it? So that maybe you can own a big mega mansion. Well, I bet everyone would work a lot harder if they knew that instead of, maybe owning a mega mansion, I can definitely own a decent apartment, and I can definitely live in some social housing situation where I can walk to my local Starbucks and get a nice cup of Joe, and the people there will be working hard and providing me good service. And I can go to a restaurant and they'll be working hard and providing me good service. And I can go home because I'm not working too long, just long enough to get things done and keep things running. And I'm not working too hard, just long enough to keep things running well. But I'm working better because I'm happy, because life is good, because we live in this world where I can go get a cup of joe and I can go talk to my friends and I can do whatever I want, without taking from others, of course. I can live a decent life. I think that if everybody worked a little bit harder because they were working for the group and not against it, I think our efficiency would go up a lot. And that's not even to say that the methods by which we measure efficiency, um, I feel like they're kind of flawed, right? Like it's such a vague term. Like, yeah, it might be like, oh, in this specific study, these things produce less, or their worked, like their individual workers produced less. But you know, as for a lot of times, what they don't account for is quality. And sometimes they do, because sometimes they'll think, oh, you thought that, and these actually had worse quality. But it also makes you think that, a lot of those studies are studying, like I said, a very small size of data. They're looking at fucking, whatever is going on in Maoist China, and they're saying, yeah, this is a definitive thing. This is a definitive take on like why nationalization is bad. And it's like, is it really though? Because, Maoist China is going through some pretty unique circumstances for a 20th century country, right? And they're looking at the USSR and things and documents and not really taking into account the actual reality of a lot of things, like the reality of the fact that these people were behind technologically for quite a while in certain regards because of backwater monarchies. And that could honestly apply to most major communist nations. A lot of them were just held back by backwater royalist powers or whatever. And I just think the efficiency argument is a load of horse shit, because the way that we can measure efficiency, bad, but also the ways in which we value efficiency are bad. If everybody, like, we could realistically, we have so much farmland, right? We have so much land that could be farmland. We have, what they call America in China? They call it Meiguo, which means beautiful country. There's a reason for that. It's because we have we have such potential. We're potential man. We're on the power scaling circle jerk subreddit. And, we're being called like Fraudica, fucking, because we can't get our dicks up to beat Greenland, and we can't even produce as much food as fucking third world countries because they're run on slavery. And I think I accidentally stumbled onto something there. A lot of those third world countries, they are run on slavery. They are run on the concentration of wealth being abused. And a lot of people confuse that as like that being a better system. Like clearly, because we have individual people who can pay people from smaller nations to do better. Clearly that means that method is superior. Because that lets us produce on a very large scale. And I think this is kind of an illiberal take, because part of liberalism, one of the founding like sort of capitalist ideals, right? Like most capitalists hold the small business in high regards. They hold the petit bourgeois in much higher regards than they do the capitalists. And I think when people say this, they don't even realize that they're saying inherently like, yeah, I prefer large scale single entities as opposed to multiple durable entities. The type of thing that fucking Adam fucking Smith would have preferred. Like if Adam Smith heard you say that, he would kill you. he would rip your fucking spine out like a Mortal Kombat fatality if he heard the way in which you prioritize the high up bourgeois being able to exploit like third worlders. Then it would be a bloodbath. All right, you're the things you're saying are so like insane to people who think like you, for one. But for two, and I think this is a better argument, is that if we all made a little bit more money, then we could have a bunch of small businesses paying third worlders perhaps fairer wages because they don't have a monopoly on their labor. And the third worlders would profit even more, and which would mean they'd have more money to put in the economy. And then guess what? What would also happen there is that we would be treating them better, which I know this is crazy. I want third worlders to be treated better, or global southerners, I guess, if you wanted to say it like that. And I think that an SOE would help that because it would create more room for small businesses. It would allow wide scale operation between several small local businesses and American run businesses. And because it would open up trade secrets. It would stop the things that allow the companies to have such monopolies. An SOE, because one, it's a really vague term, but for two, the things that an SOE can be capable of is just organizing labor, organizing people better, and making sure that it's actually being used for the common good. Because we all need food. We all need food. You're gonna die without it. Don't tell me you don't need food. You need food. And I don't know. Sometimes I feel like a lot of these arguments are like shitters. And then I'm like, well, that's the point. I'm labbing, right? I'm in third strike. I'm labbing 11, and I'm never gonna do anything with them because 11 fucking sucks. But point is, having a state-run business to make sure that we actually have food would eliminate the monopoly that companies like Monsanto have. And eliminating the monopoly that companies like Monsanto have would make Monsanto's job a lot harder. Their ability to take everything from everybody, that would become crumbling down because they wouldn't have trade secrets. They wouldn't have the things keeping them alive. And if we could also use that to make sure that the labor that the companies we're making is more ethically sourced, that we're paying people in local places, then people are going to get more money. They're going to be able to spend it. They're going to be able to form their own private enterprises. And we're going to be able to maybe return to a simpler form of capitalism where people just made real things. They didn't just speculate, where the common person could have a chance at making a better life for themselves. And call me crazy, but that's better than what we have now. That it's better to have, fucking humans being kind of dicks to each other than massive conglomerates creating fucking churning machines, right? And what would even be better is that we could make sure that this SOE, this company, we could make the American Food Company, or whatever we want to call it, easily follow environmental regulations, which is important for long-term farming practices, right? Making sure that you're using things that aren't destroying local soil qualities or things like that. Because if the earth is dying, you can't eat. You're going to be molested by 16 autistic clowns. You can't live if the environment's not taken care of. And they could do that. They could, like I said, organize with smaller business owners and use them as local suppliers, as opposed to, requiring every single, having the whole nation essentially run by a few states in terms of food production. And that would make them more valuable because, yeah, state lines aren't exactly hard lines, but being okay, well, we've got whatever can be farmed in Nevada being farmed in Nevada by a lot of people who are passionate about farming in Nevada. And then we got people farming in Utah with the shit that can be farmed in Utah. And we got Mississippians making rice, because rice is actually a major export down here. I don't know if you know that. Bigger than wheat and anything like that. We've got Mississippians making rice and whatever, and everybody's making something in their local environment that they can make. And, and it would create stronger local economies. It would create stronger small businesses, put more wealth in more hands. We could guarantee that it's paying people better. And, because it's working with a really big fund. And I think that could really not only help us, take care of our debt crisis, it would not only help us take care of a lot of the environmental regulation problems, that the fact that a lot of companies aren't listening to anything on the environment. Are these not going to drop these things? Might have to farm different plants. Okay, well, I've finished while on my farm. But it would help people in pretty much every possible aspect, in national security, in terms of the amount of money being put in the amount of hands. It would make life better by crushing the businesses which are destroying us, by making food more accessible. Like, I feel like I've listed off so many reasons I can't even keep track of them. Like, when I was writing this journal, like, the reason that I stopped my prep work and just said eventually I'm gonna film this video is because my mind was just flowing fucking arguments as to why we should have a state-owned enterprise. And yes, they're not perfect. And yes, if the government is bad, sometimes bad things can happen to state-owned enterprises. And, we do need fail-safes for that. And we do need to be able to give them autonomy and ways to sort of fight back against government corruption, or against, overall negative behavior. But I don't think that's a fault of SOEs. That's a fault of capitalism, because that happens with anything. If you have anything good going on in capitalism, and it's even mildly government related, you have to create tons of fail-safes. That's something that should go without saying. In fact, if there's a trade economy in general, if there's an economy where one person can have more than the other, and you want to do something good, you're going to have to make sure that the people who have the most can't just bribe and get their way, and you'll never be able to make it impossible. It's always going to be a fight. You're never going to find the perfect legal system. You're never going to find the perfect government. You're always going to be fighting, and that's fine. But, I think that, and we should create systems that make fighting easier in the future, that make it so that when next time a company's trying to bribe somebody to allow them to plant without following as many environmental regulations, we make that process so much harder, even for the richest of the rich. And I think that honestly, creating an SOE would be one of our first steps towards making a more socialist, working class a nation. I think that's our goal. Thank you so much for joining me in this forever world, RantCraft. Thank you so much for listening to my political rants. Thank you so much for looking at my aesthetic backdrop. I think it's aesthetic. I've got a GameCube controller as a light because I like this GameCube controller and I like being able to use it at a moment's notice. I've increased the audio quality. I hope you've noticed that, because I did. And I've made sure that it filtered audio in a certain way. And this is almost like a vlog at a certain point. And sort of just a chill sort of Minecraft stream thing I've got going on. And if you like it, that's great, because I think this is a video I'd watch. I love you. My name is Pocket Lilith. Thank you so much for watching. And I'm probably going to play some Minecraft mod or something, or maybe Kingdom Farts when I have the chance.